I will go ahead and call this joint meeting of the Carson City School Board of Trustees and the Carson City Board of Supervisors to order. We will begin with agenda item 1 on the school board and agenda item 31.
30.
Or 30. Okay, I got the wrong one then.
That's
the flags,
okay.
I start with the flag salute. 30 is the call to order and the roll call. I'll go ahead and start with the Carson City School Board members. Mike Walker.
Here.
Ryan Green.
Here.
Laurel Crossman. And Joe Cassiopo.
Here.
And Stacy Wilkie.
Here.
Okay.
And let the record reflect that all the board members of the Carson Board of Supervisors are present tonight.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 1 for the school board and agenda item 31 for the Board of Supervisors. The flag salute, Mr. Nick Morano. Oh, let me say it the right way.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
And we will go ahead and move on to agenda item 2 for the school board and 32 for the Board of Supervisors. Adoption of the agenda.
Unless there's objection, I move that we accept the agenda for both boards as published.
Second.
Can we do that, Mike?
Do we have, okay.
Mike
So
said we could do it.
we have a motion by the mayor and a second. Do we have can the two boards, because it was Mike and Joe from the school board, or do we need a, does that work?
We have a motion by the school board member.
I'm in second. So I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Okay, so motion by Mike, seconded by Joe for the school board, motion by the mayor, and a second, I'm sorry, Lori from the supervisors. Any further discussion or comments?
Nope.
Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries by both. We'll go ahead and move on to now agenda item 3 and agenda item 33, public comment. Do we have any
Oh,
public
you're doing
comment?
all right, Laura. Look at that. Wow.
You do have, okay, so let me read this then. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of these two different boards. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at a meeting of the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to sign in, speak into the microphone at the podium, identify themselves for the record, and respect any time limitations imposed, and please not simply repeat the comments of others. Go ahead with public comment.
Karen Aboud. The comment I just want to make is just by way of a career and technical ed meeting that I attended. And the discussion, which I think is warranted, I wanted to share. And that was that it might be invaluable to the educating counselors in the high school to take a bus trip for career and technical ed to our manufacturers in the community and also to some of our agricultural operations in the community, like Frey Ranch, like Hungry Mother Organics, like Bentley Enterprises, so that from a career and technical ed standpoint, they can counsel the students better on what exactly those careers involve in terms of education going forward. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have any other public comment at this time?
Yes, over here.
Okay.
I have here what our Marine City Manager can identify.
That is a 25 millimeter round.
This is a 25 millimeter round, which was given to me as swag last night when I was in Hawthorne at the depot, and I was down there for a Western Nevada Development District board meeting. During that board meeting, the superintendent of schools down there talked about their program to do 300-foot holes in the ground to heat and cool their facilities. I think he said they borrowed $2.5 million. The reason they did this was because the last legislature cut their per student quite deeply. They are getting most of it back, but They went out and did this so that long-term, they won't have the heating and cooling costs that they had. I just wanted to bring that up as something, you probably all know about this, but it's something that you might want to look into.
So they're going to use that 25 millimeter?
No, but I'll give it to you if you want it. I think it's a paperweight. Anyway, it just sounded like an interesting program to me. They borrowed $2.5 million, and it's, I think, a 10-year payback, and they're going to do this. They're going to go out and do this to heat and cool, and they had some boilers that were going out. You may know about it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4 or agenda item 34, welcoming remarks. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make some welcoming remarks?
I'd just like to say, you know, we do these meetings quarterly, and I think what it says is it speaks volumes about our community being able to work together between jurisdictional boards, so that, you know, we don't let jurisdictional lines get in the way of the strategic plan that both of our organizations have. And I think it's also important to repeat that we had gone through the strategic planning process to make sure that our strategic plan is compatible with the school boards, and that the answer to that was yes. And so, you know, I think our board looks forward to participating tonight and learning about the things that are on the agenda, learning about what's going on in the school district, because it helps us in terms of, you know, in doing our job. And, you know, let me just close by saying this, that when we had the collective bargaining agreements up today, one of the police officers who was the head of the union for the deputies said, you know, Carson City is a great place because it has an air of excellence, an air, A-I-R, an air of excellence. And tonight's meeting is indicative of that air of excellence. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm sticking with it.
Thank you very much. And I was just going to update, we have just finished with the school district all of the season of graduations. And while we don't have percentages yet because that's based on cohorts and it takes quite a while to get it, I do have some raw numbers that I thought you might enjoy hearing. So Carson High School graduated 473 students this year. 270 standard diplomas were given, 120 honors diplomas, 74 advanced diplomas, and 9 adjusted diplomas, which are for usually special education. Pioneer High School graduated 56 students. This is the second largest graduating class in the history of Pioneer High School. 46 standard diplomas, 1 honors diploma, and 7 advanced diplomas. Also, the adult education program this year graduated 17 students. Last year, they graduated 5. So there's a lot of work, hard work going in on the part of the staff members in the district. Also, I wanted to let you know for the CTE program, out of 168 eligible students, 100 of them earned their CTE certification, which means they passed both tests and they maintained a GPA of 3.0 or better. In addition, and this is self-reported by the students, so the number might be a little lower, but it's been reported that over $4 million was earned in scholarships by the students of Carson City School District.
All right.
So good things are happening.
That's a good number.
And wanted to share that with you before we begin. Okay, do we have any?
$4 million, it's pretty impressive.
Oh, the other thing I forgot, we had 83 students participate in the Jump Start program this year. And 17 of them, let me double check. 18 of them earned their associate's degrees while at the same time they graduated from high school. And with the increase in juniors starting the program, we expect that number to go up next year. So we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5, or 35 Alpha for the school board member.
Laurel, you're all right, Madam President.
All right, we got her.
Thanks. Mr. Morano and Richard Stokes.
So I'm going to run through briefly all the bills that as a city we've been tracking. The board members have heard this multiple times, so I'll give a quick blurb on what the bill was, what happened with it. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer on any of these individual bills. Assembly Bill 120, Richard, I'll let you address that. I'm sure you'll talk about it. That was a school construction bill. Assembly Bill 121 was a collective bargaining bill that never met the original committee deadline and never got out of committee. Assembly Bill 140 would have adjusted the Carson City and the Washoe County line in and around Duck Hill. I apologize, that sounds pretty loud. In and around Duck Hill. That failed also to meet the committee deadline and did not advance. Assembly Bill 151, we opposed this bill. This would have required post-certification for dispatch operators. We're able to get the bill modified so that there are voluntary standards that are going to be promulgated later in the year, but the governor did in fact sign that bill. Assembly Bill 153, this was a bad bill. This would have enabled counties to create an impact fee and charge other counties for economic development. That bill failed to advance out of committee. Assembly Bill 154, that was a prevailing wage bill, passed, but the governor vetoed it. Assembly Bill 190 would have required different safety standards for entertainers in parks and recreation facilities. It passed, it was modified. We were able to support the modifications to the bill that did pass. Pardon me?
Which is what? What happened in the modification?
I think the only standards, let me pull this up. For some reason, I don't have my internet connection. If I can address that offline with you, because I'm not sure with my note right here what did pass. Assembly Bill 246, that was sponsored by Assemblyman Al Kramer, specifically to address Old Clear Creek Road. That would allow 2 or more counties to establish a joint improvement district. It passed, so that gives the potential there between us and Douglas County in the future, potentially, to address the Old Clear Creek Road problem. Assembly Bill 271, another collective bargaining bill that was vetoed by the governor, as was Assembly Bill 290. Assembly Bill 379 created the ability of a Board of County Commissioners to create a park district similar to some of the fire protection districts and some of the other GID type districts. That passed and will be in effect on July 1st. Assembly Bill 417 established the state Main Street program. We're kind of excited about it. It allows cities to apply. It's the Department of Tourism is going to create the program. I think they initially monetized it with something like $350,000. Different cities around the state are going to be able to apply for and have their Main Street, their historic Main Streets included in the program, able to receive some grant money. So we're excited about that, and it takes effect on July 1st. Bunch of marijuana bills. Assembly Bill 463 never did pass committee and never made it out. Senate, I'm over to the Senate now. Senate Bill 8 was a bill we were interested in. It would have changed how the state funds pre-sentence investigations. That never made it out of committee, unfortunately. Senate Bill 57, we supported. The governor signed it. That made changes to the V&T Railroad Commission, reduced the number of members, changed how some of the marketing, accounting, and other services are done for the commission and for the V&T Railroad. We were in support of it, and that bill is in effect. Senate Bill 60, we're excited about it. It expands the ability of our ambulance service to charge Medicaid for services. Senate Bill 106 was vetoed by the governor. That was the minimum wage increase. Senate Bill 176 passed and is in effect. This requires all peace officers to wear body cams and also provides the Board of County Commissioners a funding vehicle to actually go out, outfit the body cameras, and on an annual basis maintain them. That funding vehicle would be the 911 surcharge. The Board of County Commissioners can increase it. Currently, it's 25 cents per subscriber line per month. The Board of County Commissioners could increase it up to $1. We're working with the sheriff on this right now. We're probably going to be ready to bring something to the board here I would think the second meeting in July. We're probably going to look at something around a 75 to an 80 cent is where I think we're going to end up with that. That would not only fund the body cams, but allow us to recapitalize the 911 surcharge fund. Senate Bill 236, this was a bad marijuana bill. This would have allowed private marijuana clubs, would have allowed marijuana use at public events, never made it out of committee, so we were happy that that didn't advance. A bunch of marijuana bills didn't advance. I'm not going to go into all of them. One that did and the governor signed, we were very happy about. Senate Bill 344, that's a labeling bill. A lot of, especially the edible products, and we had Supervisor Aboud and others earlier today voice concerns about some of these edibles, especially the ones that are packaged that either would directly appeal to children, things like gummy bears, for example, other packaging that could directly appeal to children, and depending on the parent, if it was left laying around, it would look like something that was just candy or something that a child would typically consume. Senate Bill 411, we're very happy about this. This was a feral cat bill. This codified what we've already adopted, which is our trap, neuter, and release program for feral cats. So we're happy about that. We were not happy about Senate Bill 439 that never advanced. That would have enabled a nickel per gallon diesel fuel tax. Right now, none of the diesel-powered vehicles that drive on our roads pay any tax that goes to maintain the roads. So unfortunately, that bill did not advance. We were a little disappointed in that. Senate Bill 469, a collective bargaining bill vetoed by the governor. Senate Bill 487, this was the main marijuana revenue bill. It did pass. It establishes an excise tax for cultivation facilities, a 15% excise tax. So the state is going to collect on the wholesale price of marijuana from the from the cultivation facility as it goes to a production facility. They'll collect a 15% excise tax. The state will set aside $5 million of that revenue for distribution to the counties who have opted in to marijuana. It also enabled the Board of County Commissioners to charge up to a 3% gross revenue fee for marijuana establishments. It also, in addition to all those other revenue items, it will tax both medical and retail marijuana sales with a state sales tax. So that's a major change. Right now, the medical marijuana at the point of sale is not paying the state sales tax. So that really concludes the update. Supervisor Bagwell will get your answer during the meeting. I just have to look that one up. Any other questions? Thank you.
It's my privilege to be with you this evening, members of the combined boards and city and school staff. For the record, Richard Stokes. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Carson City. Typically, at each legislative session, education is a big ticket item. For the last several sessions, there have been a number of high-profile initiatives that have occurred. I was in Washington, D.C. about a year ago, and the term that was being used nationwide with regard to a lot of the changes happening in education was initiative fatigue. And as numerous educational programs and processes were being rolled out statewide and also at the federal level, I was pleased to see that during this session, while there were numerous education bills, there weren't any that were of the profile that required us to stop, change what we're doing, and go in a different direction. So I too have some items that I'd like to bring you up to speed on as it applies specifically to education. AB 64 changed the way that students with disabilities, or special education students, actually have to receive a regular diploma. Typically, if students are in special ed, they get some sort of an adjusted diploma, which then hampers their abilities in the future to go into the military, to have other options with post-secondary training. And so at this point, in place of passing specific examinations, our special ed students can receive a standard diploma if they demonstrate through a portfolio that they've met the proficiency standards and contents of performance. So that will be an improvement, I believe, in our processes. AB 85 requires all schools in the state of Nevada to provide training to our students in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR. If you've taken any of the current CPR training, you'll know that a new process takes out the pulmonary part in terms of rescue breathing, but it does require the correct use of compressions. And in order to do that, there's specialized mannequins that are going to be provided to the school districts by the Heart Association, and our students will be trained on how to perform those compressions. That's mandatory. Assembly Bill 117 have to do with academic plans, and it requires students in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 to meet individually with counseling staff and also administrative staff to review each student's academic plan and make sure that they're on track to become ready for both post-secondary training and also entrance into the workforce. AB 236 is interesting because I think it does reach across both entities, and it has to do essentially with FERPA, or the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it allows for those community members who provide child welfare services to have access to educational records. As you know, typically those educational records are reserved for family members only. But as we have those organizations that are supervising children who are in foster or other care, they also need to have access to that information. So this provides that ability. And of course, it wouldn't be a legislative session if we didn't have an update on bullying and cyberbullying. And AB 292 accomplishes that. And really the only changes in this, well, there are several, but one has to do with timing, when a report is made with bullying in our schools. Then the other is a reporting aspect that requires a quarterly report to explain how many acts have actually been verified as bullying. And like I said, that's to be done quarterly. AB 451 got a lot of press because it requires our trustees to receive training in the first and third year of their 4-year term, and they're not to complete less than 6 hours during those 2 years. And so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Training in all aspects of boardsmanship. And so that could cover all the ground from open meeting laws to personnel laws and those kinds of things that are applicable to trustees' lives in public service.
Right now, we're working, the Nevada Association of School Boards is working with Ford and Friedman to figure out exactly what classes they want to teach. But mostly it's the open law and learning how the budget works in the Nevada plan, because it's so unique. But we'll have more of an update. NASB will start working on that in August, so I'll have an update at the next meeting exactly what that would be.
Senate Bill 19 was signed up at WNC by the governor, and this requires all school districts in the state of Nevada, which includes charter schools, to enter into a cooperative agreement with one or more community colleges, state colleges, and universities. Glad to say that later on in this meeting we'll have a report from WNC regarding our Jumpstart program. Happy to say that we're already meeting this obligation, which I don't see as an obligation. It's really a great benefit for our students. SB 20 revises provisions related to the teacher shortage. You may not know, but teachers coming to Nevada out of state are required to take a number of examinations showing their competency related to Nevada law, especially as it applies to education, the Constitution of the United States, and also the Nevada Constitution. And this sometimes hinders, especially when we hire in August, it hinders the ability to get licensed staff in the classroom. And so instead of requiring new teachers to gain these provisions or to meet these provisions, the state has passed a law allowing them to have 1 year to get these provisions removed from their license. And so consequently, a teacher who's licensed in another state can go to work immediately, begin to receive payment, and then they have that year of provision to remove those provisions. Let's see. SB 241, the governor, and through some of his processes and programs, he has developed some specific seals that identify speciality in a certain training that has occurred during a high school student's work effort. And newest diploma type or state seal, a seal will actually be placed on the student's diploma, will be identified for students who have taken courses in STEM and STEAM. And of course, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And STEAM, with the A in that word, adds the arts. And so it allows students to leave high school and go into the workplace showing that they have accomplished a certain level of proficiency in those areas. For many of you, this may ring true. SB 322 now requires secondary schools in our districts to have a course in civics. This particular bill requires, or at least allows, for public high schools to begin administering the same examination that our people who are sitting for naturalization tests will be able to take. And so students will have an opportunity to see what's on that exam and be exposed to items that are important, and have an opportunity to be exposed to that information. So there's several others here, but as you know too, there are some bills that are of interest to us that are sitting on the governor's desk waiting for signature, and we will look forward to what those items are and bring those certainly to at least our trustees as those things come forward. We are still waiting to see what the total impact of that will be, but we were able to make our final budget based on, I think we were within $1 of the actual amount, $2, sorry, the amount that we were allowed through the legislature. When the Nevada plan was first built in the 1960s, of course, it was aimed at trying to be adequate for all students. Since that time, of course, there's been specialized education required for students requiring IEPs, learning the language. There's one more, free and reduced lunch. So there's special populations now that did not exist in the 1960s that exist now. And so there have been monies that have been made available to the tune of $1,200 per student who is in the bottom 25th percentile, is an English language learner, and who is not special ed. And we hope to get some of that money, but the way the law is written is they will begin providing those per pupil amounts to school districts and schools that are considered 1- or 2-star schools. So we could actually get to our school district that has 3-star schools and not receive a lot of money for that particular bill. So we're waiting to kind of see how all that works out for us, but we're optimistic, and right now we feel like we're in a fairly good space in terms of budgetary processes.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Do we have any public comment on this? Okay, go ahead and move on to agenda item 6, or agenda item 35 beta. Presentation on current development trends and growth projections for Carson City for discussion only. Mr. Lee Plemmel and Mr. Andrew Fueling.
I'm gonna get
start this evening. Good evening, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. As I pull this up and here with Mr. Fueling to give you our latest update on growth projections and long-range growth planning in Carson City and with the school district. I think our last time we met was, or gave you a similar presentation, was in January. Not too long ago, but we're back in a period when there's a lot going on, so we do have I do have some updates on some of the more recent approvals and developments that are on the map now. We've had more discussions and more opportunities to communicate between our department, the city, and the school district in these last few months than we have for a long time, because there is so much new development going on. So I'd like to, I have the presentation. I'd just like to briefly go over maybe some of the information that might be relevant to both growth and for the school, and possibly affect the school district and the number of kids you have coming into the school district. The Board of Supervisors is going to be reviewing this information and a little bit more in July. I've already given this basic presentation to the Planning Commission, as did AJ last month, but in July our Board of Supervisors is going to be considering our annual growth management allocations, which include a maximum number of residential permits that will be allocated for the following year. So some of this information will be useful for the board to consider when they make that decision in the following month. So just going through a little bit of the information here. The top graph here shows not only the total number of residential permits that we've received since 2000, but also it's divided by the type of residential unit, which, as you know, has an effect on the number of kids per unit that come out of a given residential unit, with the base yellow there being your typical single-family detached residence, and then the other portion of it that's the predominant, secondary predominant, is multifamily, which is the check pattern on top there. So a couple things about that graph. You could see how that ratio has been over time, but also we've been in this last 9 or 10 years previously in really an unprecedented period of no growth in Carson City. I have tables for growth management that go back farther as to how many residential units per year we've had. You know, our peak really was at about 1996 before this, but for a good period in there, before 1996, for about a decade or so, and leading up to before the recession, in Carson City, we were typically seeing the number of residential units kind of between 250 and 400 every year. So it's not unprecedented to see that kind of growth rate on average over a period of time. I think, as I'll show you with some things coming up, we might be approaching that many in 2017. Possibly a little more than average based on what we're seeing and what's out there. Also on this graph, I just wanted to show again kind of the ratio of the types of units that we have existing in Carson City. On the left there, by type on the left is since 2000. On the right side is the existing units in Carson City by type, with the yellow being single-family detached, and that other whitish area is mobile homes, which is also a single-family detached product. And then you have the orangish colors that are multifamily or some other attached type of product. And on the right there, that's the total distribution of existing residences. And since 2000, the distribution has actually kind of roughly been the same. And we've have a little more multifamily than generally, but if you combine the multifamily and the attached single-family products, so basically that attached product ratio has actually been relatively the same recently, which a little surprising, because I would anticipate as we get towards build out and we start to see more infill development, as we see less of the greenfield development like at Lampa Ranch and Schultz Ranch, that we would expect in the future to probably see a slightly higher percentage of an attached residential product. boy, the one I copied, sorry, I'll go off this. The one I copied is not the one I expected to pull up here, but so our build-out population, again, this is our projections for looking out to build out in Carson City, and we think we have the land, we have the water, we have the ability to accommodate a capacity of 75 to 80,000 people. Looking at, so this graph shows where the demographers' projections are, kind of on the low end probably right now. They fluctuate over time. We have a higher projection there, but I think in any case, you know, we're a number of decades out from build out, so we're going to see fluctuations of growth and development over time. And kind of the average has really been over time about 1%. So these kind of ranges there that we're showing there between 0.8 and I think about 1.3%. So if you kind of project those out, we kind of see those projections. Let me see before I probably, yeah, I pulled up the wrong presentation, but that's okay. So just one other thing I'd like to cover, the slide that didn't show up that I have is actually in your packet, I believe, is housing. There we go. Yeah, it's in your packet. So the housing sales and prices, which again, we see during the recession, the housing sales really was flat. And what we've seen since 2012 is also the average, no, the median single-family home price and average home price has continued to creep up to where actually so far this year, and it's a relatively small sample so far this year, but it's, you know, the median home price in Carson City is back over $300,000. I don't know exactly what that means to the school district, but as prices go up there, I'm sure that's a different demographic that's buying more houses, and that's what's being built now, and that's what's being sold in Carson City. So I think that's just a interesting piece of data that we continue to keep track of. Boy, yeah, I'm going to turn it over to, well, we have about, this is not the graphic I wanted to have up, but since January, we've had a number of new tentative maps and multifamily projects come in. So right now on the books, we have about 2,200 approved residential units in some form, which includes about 1,400, 1,500 single-family detached residences and about 700 or so multifamily residences that are at some level of approval. So that's about 2,200 of about 5,000 to 7,000 total residential units that we think we can accommodate or that we will have over the next 40, 50 years to reach that quote unquote build out population. Well, so there's a lot of units on the book, and I want to stress again, and I've said this before, that the number of approved units is good for long-range planning, but the pace of growth that I think we're all have concerns about or need to address, our growth rate is dealt with through growth management. So even some of these projects where there's multifamily projects come in that have 300 units, we likely and rarely see 300 units built at one time. Even in those, they'll usually phase that and have buildings. So, you know, we don't anticipate a large number in any one area. On the other hand, we have the Schultz Ranch there that has, they're at over 200 approved units right now. They're getting ready to go on to the next phase, and they're building at least 10 units every month. So I don't know what you're seeing in the school district of kids coming out there yet, but they're continuing to sell houses, and they plan on moving on to the next phase and continuing to record maps and build new single-family houses. So this map kind of shows generally some of those. Again, I apologize, it's not the most updated one that I intended to show, but I'm going to conclude with that. Do you have any questions on what's going on?
What's the process? If you know, we've batted around casually about creating a redevelopment area on the east side of town. Actually, I'm taking Supervisor Bunkowski's talked about this. What's the process if we go down that with the, how do we integrate that if we do it with the school board? I mean, because redevelopment districts affect the funding of the school districts. So how involved are they? Is there a way that they're, I appreciate it, probably cut you off guard.
Yeah, so, right, that's the first I've heard of it, but, no, so but for redevelopment districts in general, I mean, they're throughout the state, and there's different ways of making school districts whole. I know the Southern Nevada is dealing with the same issue, and, you know, they have some legislation that is related to that and what some of the revenues generated from the redevelopment districts are spent on. I don't think it takes state legislation for us to do that. From past experience, I believe we would have the ability, if we were forming something like that and it was the desire to make the school district whole going forward, that as part of an agreement, as part of the redevelopment district could reimburse the school district those funds, those growth funds that would otherwise go to them. And to what the mayor's speaking about, in a redevelopment district, the base level of assessment is fixed at the start of when a district is created. And within that fixed base, all the property taxes are distributed to the applicable agencies as they always have been. And the growth of the property tax only goes to the redevelopment district. So what would be done is that you would have to, by agreement, calculate some percentage of that growth to go to a certain entity as well.
I would just add to that too that you know, any discussions about a redevelopment district on the east side of town is typically going to only encompass a commercial corridor, commercial properties. So if you're talking about setting the base at the time that the redevelopment district is formed, there's going to be minimal impact to the school district because it's not going to affect any residential properties. It would be commercial, and that you're not going to see a decrease. You're just not going to see the incremental increase. And that's not where typically you're going to see the growth either. The redevelopment district is usually intended to reduce blight or do infill projects, not for growth, new construction, which is where you're going to see that impact.
Wait a minute. It would impact the school district for future growth in that area because that money would stay in the redevelopment instead of go to the school district and or the city general fund. Both would be impacted unless we made an agreement to give the growth back to the school district.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is you're not going to see a lot of commercial growth in the commercial corridor. You might see some infill, you might see some rehabilitation. You're not going to see a lot of new growth. We're already over-retailed, over-officed, so I just don't see any opportunity for a lot of commercial growth.
I should also say, I didn't mean to step on anybody on the redevelopment issue, but I'm also kind of interested in, you know, how there are some areas in East Carson City that I think could benefit from a redevelopment area, I think. But you know, so we may do the due diligence on something like that. And I didn't mean to jump out ahead of Brad or Lori here. So.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, supervisors, city staff, and all my board trustees. Just to on the redevelopment question, the current impact of the redevelopment. I just know I don't know if lose is the right term, and I would say I really don't understand the redevelopment district as well as many of you do. But it's about $400,000 in revenue that gets I guess moved off to this redevelopment district annually. So that's about the impact of us currently.
$400,000?
Correct.
Under our existing redevelopment.
Correct. Okay, so this presentation, I feel like Mr. Plummer and myself are on a roadshow with growth discussions, but this is similar to what we showed a couple weeks ago. And similar to what you've seen previously with some updating, basically, and I won't spend too much time getting deep into things, but there are two things I think that are different that will kind of give some perspective as to the areas impacted by growth and the specific schools that are going to be impacted and what it's going to look like for them in the relatively near future. So this I showed last time, and just to clarify again, when we're looking at, I'll show some ranges of what we think the populations will be at different age groups, and it's based on a historical relationship between the total Carson City population and the number of students we had at that given beginning of that decade. I need to dig through our warehouse to find some old information on the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I don't have that yet, but it would be good information to have. Updating again, so now this is the 16-17 school year information. So of our total school population, about 46.82% are elementary school, and this has actually been updated with our pre-kindergarten numbers, which I previously had left out for funding reasons. It gets kind of weird, but pre-kindergarten is a hot topic at the state level and with us, and we're going through quite a few changes, which will be discussed later. But the big piece with that is that as pre-kindergarten, what we offer currently is half day, and it's going to be going to full day. So there are significant impacts that come with that as far as capacity at the schools. Middle school about 22%, high school about 30% of our total student population.
May I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Just for an understanding, for my perspective. I understand you just said you're going to go to full-day pre-K, but can you explain the pre-K is not just any 4-year-old? Is that only specific eligibility for that pre-K?
So Mrs. Kima will be discussing that in quite a bit more detail than I am right now. There are different, depending on a student's status, they might be more likely or less likely to be eligible to be in pre-K. And there are limitations as far as how many students we can actually take into our programs as well. So the funding that we receive for it, there are strings attached as far as what we can, the students that we can serve with that funding. So, but I think you'll get quite a bit more detail what you're looking for a little bit later. Is that, would you, or if you don't mind? Okay. Right.
Susan Kima, Associate Superintendent for the record. If you look in your board packet, under Agenda Item 8, it gives the criteria for the students that will be served in our pre-K programs.
But Sue, on this one, this is this current year, so we didn't have income limitations on our pre-Ks that are in this number.
No, but they were
Correct.
expected to be below the poverty level. They were expected to be, the grant did have qualifications. They were expected, our students were expected to be English language learners, special needs, or in poverty. But we did not need to collect the documentation and proof for poverty like we need to on this upcoming grant that I'll be talking about in the next couple agenda items. Anything else?
Thank you, Mrs. Kima. Okay, so with those updated numbers looking out into the future, and this again, Mr. Plemmel showed you kind of this build out 75,000 people here in the near future. I have that time frame kind of compressed here into 2040, and that's not the same year that his graph will show, but just to give you an idea, in 2040, the number of students we're talking about at each level, about 4,700 to 5,400 elementary students in the city at full build out, about 22 to 2,600 middle school students, and 3,000 to 3,500 high school students. So it's again, I think we had talked about potentially need for some new schools at the elementary level. We'd at least need 2 more elementary schools if we keep the size that we generally we consider ideal, which is around 600 students. Probably 2 to 3, maybe. The middle school level, we'd likely need to at least add maybe a double the size of Eagle Valley or add a new middle school. And then at the high school level, again, you can have 1 massive high school, or I think we floated the idea of Mayor Bob Kroll High School in the last meeting we attended, so I don't know if that's still on the table, but anyway.
Can I just clarify? That's why I asked the pre-K question. I just want to clarify. The elementary includes the projection that you have the all-day pre-K is in that number.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to understand that it's not just population, it's because you're also adding pre-K.
And I'll say it gets really, because of pre-K previously being half day and now thinking of it full day, it makes thinking this through really complicated. So I don't know the numbers are perfect, but they're relatively close to what I think things will look like going forward. So these are the conversion.
Can I ask a question on that? Sina, you may know, or Lee, was it you that told me that the growth in population currently is occurring in the family age folks? What we're seeing at the library, or did I misunderstand what you said? Or didn't you say anything?
Sina Lloyd, Carson City Library, for the record. So what you have is so Esri is the data that we're using. It's from Esri, and there's different tapestry segments, and the tapestry segments in Carson City that is showing the most growth is aspiring young families. That doesn't mean that there isn't maybe 5 or 6 different types of tapestries that may be retired groups coming in, but they just happen to have different demographics in monetary gain. So we might have retirees coming in who are wealthy or not wealthy, but our largest single segment is aspiring young families.
I don't know how you came to your projections, but I give that one some thought a little bit. I know you're going to do that anyway, but okay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that's as much as can looking at these ranges, and it's really important to think about. Yes, there's growth. There's people coming to Carson City, but what does that growth look like? What are the demographics? Absolutely, it matters. As we're currently working on, and I think we're finally near a finished product, is being able to look at the current students of Carson City geolocated on a map. And then we can look at the different residential units and if they're apartments or single family, and see how many students that we are actually converting out of those. We're still using estimates at this point that are slowly fine tuning, but later actually in the next couple of weeks, I should have something where we can really look at and focus in on the different areas and see how many students we expect in these different areas. So this will be updated again when we have that information, but these are the current per 100 units, how many students we would expect to come out of those areas right now. That's not the button, sorry. This is the map we've used previously with anticipated construction. So this isn't the same map that Mr. Palma just showed you, but this is what I've been working off the last year, trying to figure out what the impact will be in different school zone areas. What makes that difficult is if you look at our school zones, and they're not drawn in a way that is always so easy to pinpoint where the impact will be. Specifically Fremont Elementary School, which is the blue, which there's a story behind that, but it's hard to always kind of figure out where people are going to go based on some of these zones. And it's something that we need to consider and talk about. We talked about our board meeting on Tuesday night, is looking at these zones and considering the capacity issues, seeing if there's maybe some things we can do to help ease that capacity concern in some places. So this was the breakdown of the anticipated construction. So what was on that map, this is not full build out. This is just current anticipated construction in Carson City. These are the numbers. They really haven't changed too much from last time of the number of students in each zone. And I have it broken down by elementary zone, but these would be students of any grade level. So the greatest impact, of course, is Fremont, because that abuts up to the Lampa area, which would have the most significant growth of anywhere else in the city. But this time I broke this down so that you could see it by how we would estimate it at each grade level. So of the 136 additional students we'd expect in the Boardwalk Bray area, 64 would be elementary, 31 would be middle school, 42 would be high school. And again, you can see Fremont with 609 total, 285 at the elementary level, which again is the largest overall impact to any school we have. Then if you take those numbers and you actually tack them on to where we currently are, so the early childhood building is actually right behind Boardwalk Bray. We service a lot of our early childhood program, our younger special education students there. But it, in a way, is kind of a part of Boardwalk Bray, but it is separate for this part of it. But when you look at, for example, Boardwalk, when you add in the 61 students at the elementary level, they currently have 642 if you consider their pre-K program. They jump up to about 703 students. And ideally, in our discussions, when we talk about, again, populations we like at the elementary level, 600, 650 is generally the number we talk about, not really going much higher than that. And you look at the impact of Fremont, if there's the full development of the Lampa Ranch, it goes up over 800. So again, we've been having a lot of talks about what to do about that in the short term and long term, and those discussions are continuing.
Andrew, can I ask a question? It was my understanding that in the Lampa Ranch development, it was stipulated that there had to be another school, another elementary school in that location. So wouldn't that ease the burden on Fremont?
It would. So they're setting aside. There's a 10-acre plot set aside for the building at elementary school. The larger issue for us is the cost of building an elementary is now about $23 million, and we don't have that much, it looks like, going in the near future. So those discussions are continuing as to how to manage that. But absolutely the case. Yeah. If that, some of it depends on how this area develops, and we met with the developers the other day and talking about the impact of the through road on Gold Dust West and how that might impact the number of homes. So there's, I think, a lot of things still in the air, but that being set aside, if we were able to build an elementary there, that would help significantly with our problems. At the middle school level, Carson Middle is currently almost 1,100. It would go up to almost 1,250. Eagle Valley goes up to 800 students. And again, we've seen populations near this before in the schools, but the programming has changed such that we have more people and staff in the schools and offices, and the way education is happening is different. It takes more space in some cases, so the pressure is definitely being felt already at, say, 700 at Eagle Valley. So that does cause some concern.
AJ, I just wanted to add, a couple board meetings ago, I asked for some information, and we'll be getting that, as to populations in middle schools. And when we're looking at, say, disciplinary issues, at some point, what I'm wondering is, when you have a school as large as Carson Middle School, on a percent basis, are we seeing more issues than, say, a school at Empire with half the population? And as we start increasing, do we have to look at moving kids over? You know, so we don't create issues that we don't want to encounter in the future. So those are additional items that we're looking at as we go forward.
And I think if we could work it out where that new elementary school, we might expand it to 8th grade, just so that it would take off that load too and give us another one without building another secondary school, something to look at. But we're still hit with what we're gonna do about the high school population.
And I apologize, these last two slides are not in your packet, but I can send them out so that you can have copies of them. I'll autograph them if you like. But we've discussed the school district had a master planning committee that is now essentially at this point kind of done, and will be transitioning into a bond oversight committee as our projects commence. Taking out portables at Pioneer High School, replacing that with brick and mortar. Taking away portables at Mark Twain, replacing that with brick and mortar, and then putting on a full wing addition at Fremont, which will, again, in the short run, will help us ease some of the capacity concerns. But I think pretty quickly we're going to run into issues again. And again, talking about rezoning to potentially help that out. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before. So in a survey around our schools asking about space, Fremont Elementary does have one traditional classroom that is open, and that's unique because that is the only traditional classroom that is open in any school in the entire district. So, it kind of just makes for the concern. I don't know, percentage-wise to say what capacity we're at, but as far as traditional classrooms go in the district, we are essentially full. And schools are getting as creative as they can, trying to mitigate the issues that come with that. Here right now. Mr.
What funding mechanisms are available to you on bonding? I mean, where are you on the bonding capacity and your rollovers and stuff like that? Can you just kind of give us a thumbnail of where you are and what kind of capacity you still got?
Sure, and Mayor Cole, if you don't mind, actually, I think the next slide will speak exactly to what you're asking for. So, thank you. So looking into the future and just trying to consider the impact of a new elementary school, if that would happen on that lot land or wherever it would be. In my mind, and these are just kind of estimate numbers, but if you're looking to try to reduce the squeeze at all of the schools, if you could reduce by say 40 to 60 students at each school or 30 to 50 students, and somehow within a rezoning process move students towards this new elementary school, and then you have about 250 new students come into the district, you might have about 450 kids that you could put into a new school. Unfortunately, the operating costs to actually run that school, you need to run a new school, we need about 342 students. So at about 250 new students, we'd probably really be looking at a new school. We might have to kind of cover that difference until we really had more new students come in the district. But those will be some more conversations that we'll need to have in the future as students do start coming in, we really start talking about that a new school potentially. Okay. Bonding capacity. So funding for growth. So this year we were able to bond for $16.9 million, which is covering the three projects I just mentioned, along with some other smaller ones, and really geared towards increasing capacity and otherwise helping meet goals of the strategic plan for the district. In fiscal 2021 school year, we expect to be able to bond for about $20 million in additional funds. So if that's the case, we would expect a new school, if that money went towards building a new school, whatever type of school that would build, it would be ready in the 22-23 school year. But the issue we're running into with the funding is that we're expecting about $20 million, and 2 years ago that was the number we were running with that would build us an elementary school. But the number that Washoe now in the last year they're using is $23 million because of the escalation in construction costs. So that's where we're getting a little worried, and we're going through a lot of discussions as to how to, I guess, deal with that. The next bonding after that is not till fiscal 29, so that's the 25-26 school year, and then we would have a school built in 28-29. That likely would be too late, I think, depending on how fast. It just depends on how fast students start coming and how fast these developments are happening. So that'll be, an ongoing pieces of information that we'll be trying to absorb and understand to see how quickly we need to make that happen. But does that answer your question, Mayor Kroll? Okay.
Fix my electronics here by telling me, if I don't look in my notebook here, I can find that.
Okay.
So I guess in general, I have a question. I'm trying to link up your presentation with what, from the Board of Supervisors perspective or issues, because you're indicating on here that if we have any new developments that you'd like us to have them donate property, but I don't think we have any. What's major mean, I guess, would be one issue, and that based on what we've already approved with, for instance, Schultz Ranch or the Lampa project or the Vintage project, which I don't really think has children because it's elderly, but where you think there's anything we as the board level can actually do to accommodate that request, because I don't know of any major land that's left for us to develop. So is it more in line that we need to ensure that we don't give out enough permits, actual building permits in the growth management arena? Is that more where we can help you?
So I think, and to your point, yeah, there probably aren't any really large individual chunks that may justify or bring a necessity for an individual school in the area. The permit, if there were a limitation on permits, I think it would certainly help us slowly build into what we need to provide. The concern, I would say, and this is, and these slides are from the Planning Commission meeting the other night, where this was, the yellow was the specific topics we were talking about. The location of the permits, I think, let's say I think the limit right now is 700 permits, and when you think of that as a citywide limit, right? And so for me, and I think for us as a district, especially at the elementary school level, it's almost like we're managing 6 little cities. And so if all of those permits happen to be granted in one general area, it's almost as if there was no permit limitation at all, because that impact just happens and it hits really fast in that one area. So we have to figure out something in that little Fremont zone if all of a sudden there were 700 permits granted in the Lampa area. So I don't know that we have a number to say, this is definitely what we would suggest you limit permits to, but I think at least just consideration for where the concentration of those permits are given would help us at least try to smooth the impact out across the district.
Unfortunately, that's developer driven and not Board of Supervisor driven.
Sure, understood. Mr. Palmer?
So, may I? Okay. So let me extrapolate this in my mind a little bit more here. So currently, the board policy has been to utilize a 3% growth factor, not by any particular area. Is it something that you're recommending we could potentially change, just for instance, the Fremont area, that you would want a lower growth answer, like only I'm just talking out loud, but like 2% to try and match your bonding capacity? Because you're saying you're going to have 20 million in FY21. If we were to extrapolate what that means you can handle, have we matched up the growth plan to that?
I don't know that I know the exact answer to that. I'm not sure the only way I could see if there were limitations on permits based on when we can actually bond out, if there were only so many students in that area where Fremont could absorb what comes in the first 5 to 6 to 7 years, and then in the fiscal 26 bonding cycle is when we actually look to build the school. That would help, but I really don't. To say a 2% limit on the growth, I can't conceptualize what that means as far as the number of units and in that area. But that might be a more complicated question for Mr. Plummel and I to consider.
But you see where I'm trying to, how you want us to manage the growth for us to do a growth management plan and be able to restrict, or we just go with the 3% growth management plan that we've had.
I think, and Lee, if you can correct me if I misstate this, but the way our growth management is currently, it's broken up into private builder permits and developer permits, and if one group or the other doesn't take their allotment by a certain period of time, then the balance are first come, first serve. So we're already set up, I think, to control the growth on an annual basis, because the developer isn't going to get those 600 or 700 permits. They're going to get their allotment, which might be 50% of that, 55% of that. I don't remember what the number is, Lee, but there's already sub-limits set in place from that overall 3% growth. I think we also have to be very careful, too, when we start telling a developer who has a project entitled that although we'll allow 700 permits, we're not going to allow him to build out what he's gotten entitled. I think that's a surefire path to a lawsuit for the city.
Lee Plummel Community Development. So I think that's something, I don't have a good answer for you right now. So, I'd have to look at the growth management ordinance and what that says to see if you have the ability to further limit by area. I mean, kind of off the top of my head, I would think that's a possibility. You would certainly have other things to consider if you're going to think about that, but it's something I'll go back and before bringing to you is, another thing I was thinking is look into that. Another thing I was thinking is it'd be good with our new GIS system to have the school zones laid over that so that we could start integrating our maps as to where development's happening and in what school district that is. So I'm going to be talking to them and our GIS try to get that integration.
I don't think we're asking for anything. I think we kind of got on here a little late. I don't think we really saw that there was going to be this much growth in this period of time. At least I didn't as a school board member. I think one of our concerns are twofold. Not only we do not have enough money to bond to make a new elementary school or a new middle school or a new high school, but then if we do get that money, now we're having trouble filling teacher spots as it is. And you're talking about a medium home of $319, and our starting teachers come in at $40,000. So even if we could fill those positions, those people probably aren't going to live in Carson, which is a little bit of the problem that we have with our teachers now. In fact, we have staff looking at seeing how many people live in Washoe, Story, and Lyon, and Douglas because of the home values now. So we have a whole different set of problems than you guys do, and I don't think there's anything at your level at this point that you could help us out with. I think it's just sharing this information and getting the maps aligned so that we kind of can see where the growth is and where our zoning is, because the mayor will tell you, him and I were one of the last ones to go through a zoning meeting for the schools, and it's not a lot of fun, and it's very contentious. So we're starting early so that we don't have that same contention that we had in 1996 when we were on the board then. So I think this was just more of for us to kind of get a feeling for what's coming and what we have to work with, because our problems are a whole lot different than what you guys have propriety over.
I think for planning purposes for the school trustees, I think one of the things that you need to take into account, although, you know, AJ, your numbers are based on averages over time, but that's not the way growth occurs. Unfortunately, that would make it a lot easier. It's a bell curve going both ways, and we're on the initial part of the upward bell curve right now, so you're going to see accelerated growth over the next 5 years. So you're going to see a lot of students coming in over the next 5 years, and then it may level off or even start to drop, and then we'll probably go into a stable period or maybe even a reduction in population again. But that's my concern for you, is that when you average it, you're giving yourself more time than I think you actually have. I think that you're going to hit a critical point in the next 3 to 5 years with a number of students coming in because of all the new housing projects that are actually coming vertical out of the ground. And then it may stabilize and you may be able to catch your breath. But I think that you're going to get caught off guard if you look at the averages and think that you have 10 years to do this, because I think you have 5.
Could I piggyback on that? I think, interestingly enough, your historic data shows what Brad's saying. I was here in 1970 for a visit, and in 1970, according to your data, the city had grown 3 times, from 5,000 to 15,000. What actually happened was that the city became a consolidated city in '69, and so in '70 that brought in 5,000 roughly out of the county. When you go forward from there, however, from 70 to 80, the city did double from 15 to 30. And so those are real figures when you're talking that. And that is exactly what he's saying. It's like quantum physics, you know. It comes in bursts, and then it goes away, and it comes in bursts. And that's because of the capital markets and the way people behave after the capital markets become unleashed. We've had low interest rates for some time, and now we're coming out of recession. Boom. And he's right. 5 years is the window, I think.
So if I could just ask, where is your projection for Schultz Ranch? Where are those elementary students going? Seeliger?
Excuse me. Yeah, currently Schultz Ranch is zoned for Seeliger Elementary School. So the total growth for Seeliger in that area, and it really is primarily driven by Schultz Ranch. I don't know if there's anything else really in that area. Or the Canyon Vista is the other one, sorry. Mm-hmm. So that's 184 total students, of which 86 would be at the elementary level. So that's where Seeliger, 589, and this is actually October data, they were at 621 towards the end of the year, I believe. So they had already added students throughout the school year. And I think, as Mr. Plum was saying, that Schultz Ranch, as those have gone up fairly quickly, I think that was probably adding to their population towards the end of the year. So at some point in the future, probably sooner than later, they go to 672. And you know, again, kind of to your point, that if that happens a lot quicker than these averages look like, that becomes a real problem at Seeliger. So that's all I have for this evening. Thank you for all the questions and comments. I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
Yeah, I have one more question, and that was brought up obliquely about what do you do about your gigantic high school, which will become more gigantic?
Of course, that's a very political question. I also would dare say that the population in Carson City today is not the same population that was here in 1990. when that last school bond was proposed and failed. So a response today from citizens might look a lot different. We would need to do some canvassing of the community to see if there would be that type of interest. Mr. Fueling made mention in his presentation that some of our elementary schools were right around 700 when I first came to the school district in 2000, and we had to modify our programming. We had to put more teachers and more students in individual classrooms in order to manage our affairs. But because of programming, the things that we're doing now that we believe are successful, and the fact that people just don't like their kids in portable classrooms, and neither do I, we have looked at ways that we can try to manage our facilities so that we're able to keep the population of those facilities to about 600, 625 or so. And that's why we're looking at this elementary school. And so getting to that point is important for us. We have a little land that belongs to us. We own some property up around the Eagle Valley School. We also own fairly large lots around Seeliger. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to try to put a school in the school's backyard, but if we're forced to do something like that, I mean, those are all some of the considerations that we're looking at so that we can try to get out there in front of some of this growth. I think it's also interesting to note, even though this building is going on, we really had a net gain of students, -4, during this school year. So we started out with a certain number, a lot of students came, a lot of students left, and the net growth was really -4 students. So we really haven't seen that growth hit us yet. But there's a lot of movement in and out of the city, and so as we meet with interested parties, we had a meeting the other day with the developers of the Lampa Ranch, and we learned a lot from that. We expect to learn more over time, and there are some conditions there that could moderate some of the immediate growth that they're talking about, and so those are, you know, it would be great to have that proverbial crystal ball and know how to read all of the tea leaves, but we're trying to take the information that we have, working with the key individuals, and then of course involving our folks that have helped us with our master planning process to make some of these decisions. But it's this is very helpful for us to hear information, thoughts that you folks have, and we value that input.
John, just also to maybe answer your question a little bit, they're incremental releases, if you will, but later on tonight you're going to hear a bit from Western Nevada College about the Jump Start program, and that's a mechanism that, at least right now, currently kids in their senior year of high school are going to be off campus taking classes. It's not the solution, but it's a step. It's a positive step in a positive direction to reduce the population at any one time on the high school campus. So.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Any public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 7, or agenda item 35, Charlie, informational update on mobile makerspace at the Carson City Library. For discussion only, Ms. Diane Baker.
Thank you. For the record, Diane Baker, Carson City Library, and we are pleased to be here to tell you the status of a program that we've talked about in past meetings. And we have a little PowerPoint here for you to take you through some of the things that we've been able to accomplish and the impacts as we're coming to the end of this grant program that we have been running from the library. So the mobile makerspace, we had designed this, designed this to be able to take our library programming, our STEM-related programming outside the walls of the library. We've been growing, we are packed to the edges of the library, and so our solution and looking at that was to be able to go outside the library for the Okay. For our program, do we need the?
Just let me keep trying.
Okay. I was going to take you through, but our program has been predominantly working with the after-school program through the Parks and Rec Kids Club, and we've been able to go to 6 different sites, elementary school sites. We had one middle school site, which was combined for Eagle Valley and Carson Middle School students. The other program that we are, interacting with is juvenile detention as well. And what you see here, you see a picture of the mobile makerspace itself, our van, and we have Travis there has been our makerspace trainer that has been going out to the elementary schools and to our other different sites. So you see here we have programs at Bordewick Bray, Fremont, Fritch, Mark Twain, Empire, they combine their after-school program, also then at Montessori and Seeliger. And as you've seen there, we can go to the next slide. So, hands-on STEM learning. It's really been an exciting program that we've been able to do with, this is predominantly K through 6, which you see here. And we started with very basic things, which you have with Strawbees, where it's hands-on for them to learn their spatial relationships, to learn how to build, and then go from there and create. Geosticks, the next pattern that we were having them work with. And this, we were able to interact, not only give them individual creativity time, but work in groups and be able to develop their skills with setting up patterns and also with team learning. Makey. One of the fun ones with a lot of the individuals, this is a basic circuit board where individuals were able to learn basics of electricity, going on to programming and interacting with online programs as well. And stop motion animation. This was a particularly popular one in most of them. Not sure, there we go. Hoping that this one will show you, but this, they were able to learn the concepts of green screening, storyboarding, and then taking that to make little mini productions as well. That's not going to click. Okay. 3D printing really caught the attention. We were able to bring our 3D printer to all the locations. They were able to see how it worked, to actively be engaged in some of the design projects as well, see their designs come out on the 3D printer. And Raspberry Pi, I think, is the next one on that. Where they were able to, this was predominantly with the middle schoolers, to be able to move up from some basic computer interactions to, in the one area, to I'd actually construct a jukebox and be able to produce sounds, music, and the like through that, learning how to use breadboards and the whole aspect. We wrapped up just the last 2 weeks with some year-end fun. We were able to bring out Dash the Robot. They could get some of the basics on that. But in combining with the fun, we also did some of our wrapping up with evaluations. And we got some really good information from the participants. For the, I think what you'll see is we had an average of 271 student contacts per month. That's combined at all the locations. We had the students vote on their favorite projects. The stopgap animation 3D hit the top with all of them. And then we also went for impact to get more information from them. I used a sticker setup for them to be able to react if they learned something new in STEM, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Were they interested in doing more projects? Did they make some cool things? Can we go out? This is the, so we're going to be able to give them a good response back to show that this did have an impact on their learning and understanding of what we explained as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we have one other thing. We were able to produce a short video we'd like to share with you. We had had a chance to talk with Nevada Senator Mo Dennis, and he is a former library trustee and a very active library supporter, and he had a chance and made time to come out to one of our sites to see what we were doing. And let's see.
Does this computer have sound?
I didn't know. There.
It's really.
Ready to make something like that to the right. Before the semicolon means it needs 1 second. So vector space is brain, science, technology.
It's the computer. I think it's the computer. It's the computer.
Elementary schools and middle school program. Stick bombs flying or jumping. To have these programs where kids are getting exposed to this technology early on, so that we can be building that workforce for the future. To actually put things together and it clicks inside their head. Today, with stop motion, what they're learning is different technologies. Let's do another picture. Alright, you want to do another one? They're really excited because they know that they can develop and make their own creative object that's individual to them. They have this partnership with the library and the school. It's a great thing to see kids that are underrepresented in high-tech jobs. I think that's exciting to be able to see that they can do as well as anybody if you give them the opportunity.
It was a little painful, but thank you for persevering through that. If you do want to see it at regular speed, it is on Carson City Libraries on our YouTube channel. And also, we still do have projects going on. We have plans to carry this on after the end of the grant project. We're already signed up to do some things with the Boys and Girls Club, and we're looking to participate also in the Reno Mini Maker Fair coming up next month as well. But I would like to add, we will still be having the Maker Van available out to doing a variety of different projects. And if anyone is interested in coming out to, for a ride on the van or coming to some of the projects that we have coming up, please let us know. We would love to have you come out and see some of the cool things that we've been able to accomplish with the different students. We do have a couple of other things. I don't know if you want to just some of our ongoing, see if that would work. Anyway, for NC Labs, we still have our ongoing programs for coding focused at middle schoolers for participation take them from the very basic steps all the way through. And then our latest addition that we are very happy with is our Book Bug Pedal Library. It's going to be out with epic rides. We're going to be out there on the concourse with that. And look for it going around town. Also, Farmers Market will be there with that as well. So you can participate with one of our new ways to go outside the walls of the city library. Did anyone have any questions?
Is that what we named it? Book Bug? Didn't you put it out everywhere to be named?
Yes, so there was a naming contest, Cena Lloyd for the record, and the Friends of the Library ended up then voting on those most popular names, and Book Bug is the one that won out.
any other questions?
How'd you make out at the legislature on the state libraries? Books.
So SB 549 was introduced on the Friday before the legislature ended. That went through the Senate quickly, and then it passed in the Assembly at 12:05 a.m. We were there for that. It was pretty exciting. And so the State Library and Archives over the biennium will see an increase in about $500,000 for collection development, bookmobile, emerging technologies, and databases. And Carson City will realize, either with services through the state library or with direct grant programs, about $50,000 of that.
Good. Do we have any other questions or comments? Well, I want to thank you because I do have 5 school-age children, and all of the things that you're doing are things that my children really enjoy. My son is actually in the picture with the 3D, the NC Lab coding, because he took the class. So I like that you offer the summer classes. I like that it's offered after school because that animation and the 3D printing stuff that they do, they can't get enough of it. And I look at it as a continuation of learning that continues on. The storyboarding, they're writing. They're creating, they're imagining, and then they're learning the technology on how to make it happen. So I really appreciate this as someone that has children that are, you're spot on with the interests that they have and the things that they enjoy doing by offering this to them. And then my question for you is with the mobile maker, is that something that you would be offering like as a special day at the library during the summer, or special, something where you could come to the library if it doesn't go to a school site since schools aren't closed now? Is that something you've got planned?
We are going to look to add that in through the summer. As I said, we have 2 setups already with the Boys and Girls Club to take the van and have that there to have those type of experiences available. And yes, that is the whole point, not only at the library, but we are looking for other places off-site where we can engage individuals that aren't regular participants at the library or may not be able to make it to our site.
Sina Lloyd for the record. That will include us offering the mobile maker van to be visiting the schools also during the school year. Since we are outside of the grant program, that teachers will be able to utilize that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on, thank you, to agenda item 8 or agenda item 35 Delta, informational update on the Carson City School District pre-kindergarten program partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Western Nevada for discussion only. Mrs. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima, for the record, Associate Superintendent, and
Katie Leo, for the record, Boys and Girls Club Executive Director.
we're here tonight to talk to you about, or just give you a brief update on an ongoing partnership that the district has with the Boys and Girls Club, and to let you know about our latest venture. Just to put it out there, we're looking to expand pre-K programming with the district on the Boys and Girls Club site. So it would be a 4-year-old program, and just to give you a little bit of background, currently the Carson City School District has 6 dedicated classrooms to 4-year-old pre-K programming, and in addition to that, we have Student Support Services, which serves 3- and 4-year-olds with special needs. Our programming runs 4 days a week, 2.5 hours a day. The state recently received a large pre-K development grant. In the first year, they received $4.3 million, and by the time they're done with the grant, which is a 4-year span, they will have brought in $43 million into our state for early learning. So we as a district have applied for a grant, which we should know the results next week. It's kind of exciting. And in your board packet, you have the requirements that were laid out before us from the state on what we were expected to do in order to qualify for the grant. So if we receive the grant, which we'll know next week, and you will see a big hurrah go up from the district and a press release from Dan Davis, our PIO, if we receive the grant. But the things that would change is that our programming would move from 2.5 hours a day, 4 days a week to 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that is more in line with the feedback that we've been receiving from our families, that they just need more time and they need more days. And then the part that we're here to talk about this evening is that will expand our programming. We will have a satellite center for 4-year-olds over at the Boys and Girls Club Center. As you might have, we've talked before in these meetings, the community partnerships are a really important strategy in our strategic plan. Last night it was reported out that the district has 182 partnerships and community partnerships, and we're growing. The Boys and Girls Club is one of our very important partnerships. We already work with after-school programming with the Boys and Girls Club, the 21st Century program. It's a location where we feed breakfast and lunch to some of our students in the summertime. Katie could probably add to that. Sure.
So, Katie Lale for the record. The Carson City School District is one of our strongest partners here in Carson City. And actually, in speaking with colleagues across the nation, I've spent a couple weeks back in DC and in Dallas meeting with people and talking about what we do in Carson City. And everyone is always amazed at how much support we provide the school district and that the Boys and Girls Club, vice versa. And, oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. I was wondering why it was echoing. And with this opportunity, we're able to use our building during the day, which it gets underutilized from the hours of 7 a.m. when we open the doors, when my staff get there, until 2:30 in the afternoon when kids are bussed over. And when the school district came to us and said, would you consider being a pre-K site? Of course, I'm like, yes, because we've been talking about it for a while. And getting more kids in the building. We have a beautiful space. If you haven't been to the Boys and Girls Club, which I think everyone in here has, we have a fantastic space for teeny tiny ones all the way through 18-year-olds. Something that we're working on expanding is our playground. We'll have a new playground put in before the school year starts. We are expanding and revamping our front entry, not quite to single point, but there will be a lobby and I don't want to call it a corral, like a holding pen for parents and community members, but it will corral the parents and community members and create a little more silence when you walk into the building, so it's not a deafening 425 kid roar when you first come in. But with those, it's allowed us to tell the school district, look, we're making changes. We want you here. We want to be able to expand our services and support the community and give kids a place to come, whether it's for pre-K or it's for after-school care.
Something that's important to us is that Katie's staff is CPR certified, so that supports the safety for our students. Recently, Boys and Girls Club has been approved for Medicaid with supports for social and emotional learning competency programs for students, parents, counseling services, play therapists for early intervention support. And then, it's another way, we share the same value system in supporting our youth in the community, so it's another way to continue that value system in our support. As Katie said too, during the day, the space is underutilized, so therefore the pre-K program, if they can't play outside because of the inclement weather, there's space inside the building for them to be able to move around. No, it would be free to our families that qualify for the program. That's correct.
Sue, has it presented to have instructors? Do you have enough for this expanded program?
So in this particular case, we would advertise for another employee. We do have the position announcement up on the website, and there is an applicant sitting in the pool waiting to see if we get the grant, so we can interview that applicant. That doesn't mean there isn't more there as I make this announcement.
All right, thank you.
Speaking of the grant, is that when you find out next week, just 1 year or the whole 4 years, or do you know yet?
Well, in the last legislative session, a lot of the grants were year to year. And the feedback from school districts across the state was it needs to be for the biennium. And so most of the feedback, or most of the grants that we're receiving now from the state, or the word on the street, is that they're going to be for the biennium.
Mr. Mayor, there's no charge. With the strong partnership that we have, we feel that we can do this. We are in 3 schools right now, currently in the school district: Bordewick Bray, Mark Twain, and Empire Elementary. And through our 21st Century programs, we have an agreement where the school district does not charge us to be there and run these programs. So my board feels very strongly that they deserve that support back, and that's the kind of partnership we have.
The grant will be able to pay for transportation as well, which is something that we haven't had in the past, and that has been a need for some of our parents, that they would like to take advantage of the program offerings that the district has, but they need transportation. And also, it would pay for the teacher, the paraprofessional. It's required to have a 20-to-2 ratio, 20 students to 2 adults, curriculum, furniture, those supplies for the classroom.
Do we have any further questions or comments? Do you have anything more to share with us? Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead and move on to agenda item 9, or 35 Echo, report on the 2017 Western Nevada College Jumpstart Program in Carson City. For discussion only, Mr. John Kinkilla, but I see Mr. Scott Morrison coming. That's okay. We'll still hear from you. Oh, and you can introduce.
Thank you. For the record, Scott Morrison, Interim Vice President of Academic Affairs, WNC, and Carson High graduate.
And he's a good skier. Grew up with my son Brad. I don't know if you guys will get a chance to. I told him about you, so he's got to get you guys got to go to lunch or ski or something.
Yeah.
All right.
Love to.
All right.
I brought with me Dr. Georgia White, who's our Director of CTE, who will present in the second half of the presentation focused on our CTE offerings related to Jumpstart College, and also Angela Ramirez, who's here. She's just finished her junior year, and she'll tell you more about her experience with Jumpstart. So we have this split into kind of a track A and track B presentation to give you an update that we'll go through fairly quickly. That's a program that's not new. It started in 2014 and has grown a fair amount. And then we'll leave the second half for the track C opportunities, which the college is really excited about growing, and there's a lot of opportunity for students in this area. So a short history on Jumpstart College. It was started at the request of some rural superintendents and in Churchill County and Story County as well. And I remember when John Kinkilla came to me as academic director and asked about starting a program like this. I said, well, hold on, how many students are we talking about? He said, well, only about 15 or 20. In that first year, there was some popularity, and it grew to 199 students in the first year. So there was this clear desire for a program like this and these kinds of opportunities. As that growth happened and we began to plan for this in 2013, Carson High School was a terrific partner. Sukima in particular really helped to design the program and make sure that we had all our bases covered. And we had a very successful first year, and it's grown from there. 9 high schools in that pilot year, and in the following year we developed a CTE track for students interested in certificates and industry credentials. So now in this year that we've just concluded, we had 413 students involved from 18 different schools, including charter schools, public schools, in 6 different school districts in our area. So this picture, in fact, is our very first graduating class, and this is a very interesting point that these are all students who started with the program in 2014 in fall. There's 27 students there, I believe. So they were students who graduated with their associate's degrees just before they graduated from high school. This was our very first group. There were only 40 or so students who qualified for that in 2014. Only 40 or so started in the program as juniors. And 27 of those graduated with a 2-year degree in 2 years, despite the fact that the program was designed to offer them only 12 credits in their first semester. These students took it on themselves to gather more credits by taking summer classes. They wanted that associate's degree, and so we made it available for them working with the high school and their school districts. And so, you've got about 75% of that first eligible group actually completed their degrees. Others may have been a little credit deficient, transferred, completed their degrees in just over 2 years, but that's a very successful outcome, and we're very proud of that picture. So the key program elements is that in general, we took whatever best practices we could find nationwide, from Complete College America to Guided Pathways, and we put together a supported cohort dual enrollment program. So the students take classes as a cohort. They're supported as a cohort with an embedded cohort coach. They take classes that are scheduled in blocks, so that they take classes between 9:30 and noon each day, 4 days a week. They do an accelerated class, typically COM 101 in their first semester. That's the 3 weeks before the semester begins. And these are ways that we sort of took pressure off of these students who are also high school students and involved in extracurriculars. We've worked with all the different high schools to really tailor that to the students' needs. And we see that, as we tailor those things, the students are really taking charge and getting involved too, and helping us to make the appropriate changes. It's been very successful. Our track A is really our associate's degree track, our transfer track. We offer 15 credits per semester, so students can stay on track to earn their associate's degree when they graduate high school, if they start as a junior. There's also the opportunity for students who aren't qualified as a junior to start as a senior and earn 30 credits. Many of them stay with WNC to finish a degree. Others transfer with 30 credits. Either way, that's a win. We have our Track B cohort, which you'll see soon, which is for students who are college interested and need to knock prerequisites out of the way. They also have the opportunity to earn some credits, but typically that's around 3 or 6 in their senior year. But they're able to go into any NSHE institution and not have to take an AccuPlacer test, for example. They can place right into college level. So that's the design of the Track B. And the Track C you'll hear in more detail soon. The cohort coach I mentioned is provided to track students and to really identify if there are any issues as early as possible. If students aren't turning in work, they're not attending class, we can intervene and make sure that the students have a good chance to either correct, or in some cases we find a different path for them if it turns out that the program just isn't a good fit, which is rare, but we do need to protect those students who find out that that's the case. It is open to 11th and 12th grade students. The college faculty have strong buy-in with this program, and they have a strong voice in how it's offered to students. And the students are treated just like regular WNC students. They have access to all the same support, the tutoring, online resources, and everything else the college offers. So here's some student success results for overall 413 students in this past academic year. You see extremely high rates of completion. To be fair, these are completion rates where students earned credit, which means they earned a D or better. When you look at the breakdown of grades earned, these students do tend to do very well. Honestly, we see students who come in with 4.0s and they get the first B or even the first C they've ever seen. But in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, a C for a college class earning credit in your first semester, that's a win. Maybe it hurts your GPA a little bit, but we see many of these students come in and earn straight A's even in the college classes. There really is a good cohort of students who are prepared for this kind of work. The retention rate, the re-enrollment rate fall to spring is higher than anything we see in any other cohort, of course. We're very proud of the associate degrees granted. One correction from earlier in the meeting, Carson High does have 17 or 18 students who are on track to earn associate's degrees next year. But the number I think that President Crossman cited was actually the juniors who just finished their first year. And they'll be on track, so the first cohort, 17 or so associate's degrees will be granted through Carson High and WNC's partnership next spring. So here's our associate's degree group just a few weeks ago. And this is 89 students from our area, so we're very proud of that. We did have Governor Sandoval come up to our campus and sign SB 19 and one other bill, and had some very complimentary things to say about our model for this, that it takes a lot of energy to put into this, really good partnerships. We give a lot of credit to our partner schools, but we're focused on student success, and that's the reason that we have this kind of success as well. We do everything we can to make adjustments and make this program as strong as it can possibly be. But clearly, you see there are many students who are hungry for this kind of an opportunity. Here's Carson City Schools completion rates and participation rates for this past year. We do see numbers that are climbing a little bit for next year. The projections for students to be in Track A and possibly in Track B. Pioneer High School also participates and has done very well. The Track C is where we see probably the most potential for growth with this in the short term, and some really exciting opportunities with all of the economic growth in our area. And we'll wrap up the Track A talk here with a few highlights. It was the youngest ever graduate from our nursing program who started in through Jumpstart, really took the opportunity to tailor the program to what she wanted to do, and now has graduated with her RN at 19 years old and got a job right away, like every one of our nurses did. There are many companies that are hiring our graduates in the area with above entry-level positions, which is really exciting for kids coming out of high school to have that kind of an opportunity, that kind of leverage when they go to an employer. And we have kids who are transferring and getting into schools that people really struggle to get into, and a lot of times the schools will cite their experience in Jumpstart as a reason why they were considered over others. So I'd like to turn it over to Angela Ramirez, who can tell you firsthand about her experience as a junior in the Jumpstart program this past year.
For the record, my name is Angela Ramirez, and I go to Carson High School, and this fall I'm going to be a senior there. So I would like to share with you my experience with this Jumpstart program, and I chose it because I wanted to challenge myself more than the regular high school classes that I was taking, and I saw it as an opportunity to save time and to save my parents some money at the time. So this first year was definitely a really big transition for me, and I would say that the hardest thing was taking on the workload. But this program does offer so much support that I was able to successfully finish it without any problem. We do have the cohort coaches that help us with any type of questions or problems that we may have, and we have the professors that are really open to helping us, and they offer a lot of support. So they made the transition a lot easier. And I would say that the most rewarding thing so far has been the opportunity to make my parents proud and to not just finish this like for myself, but to finish this for my community and hopefully allow this to be like a step forward so more people can get their education and more people can succeed at an earlier age. And well, my plans after high school is to go to UNLV as of right now. I'm deciding between UNR and UNLV. So it has also allowed me to choose that I want to be an engineer, and it has opened the pathway to meeting great people like Joe Casiopo. He has showed me around his office and about what he has done, and I really think that without this program I wouldn't have been able to choose at such a young age what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I think that it has helped me mature a lot and grow. And I definitely would recommend this to anyone else. As I said, I would like to open this opportunity for everybody. And I'm just really thankful for this. Does the board have any questions?
Put a plug in for UNR.
That's where I was going too. UNLV, really?
I gotta look when I said UNLV.
We want to hear back from you as to what you chose. Then we want to know why.
Okay. I'm gonna check out UNR or UNLV at the end of this month, so I'll decide then.
Okay.
And I just want to say that I'm really proud of you, and it's nice to see you're doing so well for yourself, Angela.
Thank you.
You know, I just want to add, there are, sorry, Angela, if you, I'll keep it short, then you can turn it back on. I just want to put a plug in for Angela and her cohorts. And I don't know if Scott was going to get to it or whatnot, but these kids started out their first semester. You know, this is kind of a learning experience for us, and we put a lot on their plates the first semester. They were, right now, as Scott said, the students are taking 5 classes. Last semester, or not last semester, but the fall semester, they were taking 7 classes. And most of these kids were taking their 5 Jumpstart classes, and many of them were taking 2 honors or AP level classes. So as you can imagine, 7 basically college level classes is a lot for anybody. Would have been too much for me when I was her age. And, you know, they persevered through it. They struggled a little bit, but they were very key in when we all got together looking at how we revamped this program with WNC and the high school in figuring out this new 5-course class load. And if it wasn't for Angela and many of the kids that were in her shoes, I think this would have been a slower process. And hearing from the kids, the students, and having them involved in this revamping and this decision-making was truly instrumental. So we owe a lot of thanks to like I say, to her and her peers.
Thank you very much. Back over to.
Hi, Georgia White for the record. Hi, Mayor. I want to provide a little background as to what led to our development of the CTE track. I call it track CTE because C sounds so average, right? And a lot of this goes along with Supervisor About's earlier comment during the public comment section. One of the things that we see nationwide, and in particular in the state of Nevada, is the strong need for middle skills jobs. Again, middle skills, everybody's looking at this, you know, I feel like we're in Lake Wobegon or something where everybody's average. But middle skills jobs refers to skill to talent that requires above a high school level education, but less than a bachelor's degree. And what is projected for the state of Nevada in the next few years is that 48% of the jobs that will be available will fall into this category. And these are mostly in high demand, high wage jobs. And to compare that, 26% of the jobs that will be available will require a high school diploma or less. So we are working with Carson High and many of the high schools in our area to bridge this so that just like the students in track A that want to get an AA degree, we want to design the opportunity for them to earn industry recognized credentials, college credit, and possibly, this is our longer range goal, certificates of achievement or their AAS degree if that's what they choose to do. And then I'm sure those of you that are on the school board have heard about the New Skills for Youth grant that the state of Nevada has been awarded. That emphasis too is on middle skills as well as preparation for post-secondary. And the employers are using these credentials to help determine who they're going to interview and for job placement. many of our top, both the new marquee, I call them, employers such as Panasonic and Tesla, as well as our ClickBonds, our Starbucks, and so on in this area, are setting up now job descriptions that tie into the credentials that are given by the community colleges in this region. And I always like to talk about an educated workforce is going to lead to higher incomes and come back to provide more stability, more economic input for the community. You know, if you remember your econ classes, the multiplier effect. And then also for economic development to bring those level of jobs to the area that we want to see. Whoop, which button am I supposed to hit? The big one. Thank you. One of the other areas I like to emphasize is that CTE careers are STEM careers. So students that do well in these middle skill jobs have a strong STEM background. And so we work closely with the library as well in developing interest in these areas. And you could see the key sectors you've probably read about many times: healthcare, advanced manufacturing, IT, construction, transportation, and logistics are all part of this program. And one of the things that we're noticing in this middle skills area is that we're losing generations of workers. So not only are baby boomers retiring, which we all know about, but with the Great Recession, there was a tendency to pull away from education and gaining these skills in this area. And so it's a real issue for the state at this point in time. Okay, I'll let you do it. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So what we, I know, really I'm speaking to my tech skills, right? Is to provide not only practical experience, but the theoretical experience, as well as professional behaviors for the students. So as with the Track A class, students coming in are in college level classes. Sometimes there's this negative image about CTE just being, oh, you go hang out, you pulled a welding torch in your hand or whatever, but that's not today's career and technical education at all. In fact, we've noticed with the professional behaviors that students are sometimes shocked that they have to turn assignments in on time and things like that. And people that are in the workforce know that. So again, as I said, there's industry credentials tied with everything, as well as college credits that feed into our certificate and degree programs. So students that participate are building that. They're stacking their credentials and they're building the pathway to obtaining these degrees and certificates. And one of the things that we found out over this past year that one of the certificates in our manufacturing program is the MT1. And students that gain that certification were having at least a $10,000 increase in their starting salary. So we're quite excited about that. Now, one of the employers that came and interviewed is starting students. So a student that's gone through 1 year of the Jumpstart manufacturing, we have 4 that were offered $17 an hour, which is your $35,000 a year range on up, full benefits, and the students like this, including pet insurance. I know, it's a little attractive thing there. Again, I'd like to emphasize the professional behaviors. One thing that I've noticed is the students gaining self-efficacy, the ability to self-direct, the ability to look for their assignments to do, and to really be able to step into a professional setting. And we also teach teamwork, troubleshooting, communication, all those other skills that are important in the workplace. Yes. For Carson High for this next year, the programs that we're offering are construction management. So students are learning not only some skills in construction, but it is a management emphasis. So they are gaining those skills to be the supervisors, the project managers, and so on. Automobile mechanics, as well as collision and repair, advanced manufacturing. And then we're also starting with a few courses, not a full program, but where they can gain certification in phlebotomy and as a certified nursing assistant. And so the students that are on the pathway to nursing, those are some criteria that they need to meet to make that entrance into the nursing program. Also next year, we want to start administering the NCRC, the National Career Readiness. I'm sure some of you have heard about that and as discussions about offering the ACT to seniors as well as the NCRC. So they'll have an additional certification to take to employers that will state their level of understanding in math, reading for information, and locating information. So nationwide, this is becoming more valuable. Other programs that we're offering as part of Jumpstart are career information technology in those areas of networking, data, and informatics. And then we're starting cybersecurity this next year, as well as business and accounting. So I've talked about some of the successes. We have students in all the programs being offered jobs. We have more jobs, internship requests than we have students to fill for all our programs. So it's a wonderful opportunity for the students going through the Jumpstart program. One of our construction students is working with the Carpenters Union and is set up for an apprenticeship. So we already started that this year. A year ago, one of the students, it was a Carson High individual, took an internship with a construction company in Washoe County, and for 2 weeks was paid prevailing wage. So I think that was like $65, so not bad for an 18-year-old. And then this year, all of our students that participated in the automotive program passed all the ASE certifications that they sat for. So many of us know American Service Excellence. When you go to have your car repaired, there's a student version, which is the same questions, but only half the number of questions. So this gives that credential to a student applying for a job that says, I will be able to be ASE certified once I've put my time in. So that's quite exciting for us. And a number of our students are pursuing further education, not just going directly into the job, to the workforce. And many are looking at engineering programs, and these skills are providing them not only with the hands-on insight of the theory that they'll be exposed to in a 4-year degree, but also they're going to have a good paying job when they go for the last couple years or so of their education. And so we're really excited about this track CTE for students and for families to give them the same opportunities in a different direction compared to the associate degree students. And then, okay. Oh, and then one thing I just want to talk about is what we're planning to do for next year, because we really do want to boost the number of students, is really set up a designated point of contact at Carson High, and this summer we'll be advertising and using social media heavily to recruit. And going back to the supervisor's comment, last year, or I guess the beginning of this year, end of last year, the governor's ON office conducted a study to find out what were some of the barriers to employment for youth from 16 to 29. And two of the kind of surprising outcomes were, one, that students, or that the participants in the survey thought that education was a barrier to getting a job, which maybe that's not the surprising part. The surprising part is they thought only a 4-year degree would prepare them. So again, as a state and in Northern Nevada as a region, as we try to shift this gap between understanding these opportunities in career and technical education and how available, readily available the education programs are.
Georgia, are you seeing a capital challenge on the CTE side? Meaning, with the A track, you have a classroom setting, so it's not capital intensive. On the C track, you need welders, you need lathes and mills, you need automotive repair equipment, and typically on a miller lathe or welder, it's one student per machine, so it's not like you can just go out and buy one. And then in addition to that, it needs to be equipment that is actually being used out by the manufacturer so that it's practical experience. So, I mean, just thinking through this in my mind, I'm thinking, man, it seems like a really expensive program and limited enrollment. How do you meet that challenge?
Well, Western Nevada College has been fortunate to receive several grants. So the TACT grant has provided some capital, some new equipment for some of our programs. And then the governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology has had a grant program, so we've purchased material for that. For the Jumpstart tracks, we've been able to run those in the morning, and then most of our other students are in late afternoon or evening. So there's not an overlap, and in fact, right now, we do have the capacity and the capital equipment, that's modern equipment, to run those courses.
I just have a question, and of course, I'm going to appeal to the ag side of this. We have AmeriCorps students that are attending WNC that are taking your business classes. So to enhance the full spectrum of how you deal with agriculture, do you see yourself at WNC expanding the program to actually provide courses in agriculture through WNC?
Great question, and I didn't pay you. So I may not be a Carson High grad, but in August I will be a 2-year resident of Carson City. So I moved from an area in Arizona that has been heavily agricultural. So, you know, that's in my heart, my spirit, to do that. At our Fallon campus, we have agricultural classes in more of the animal science side. I would like to see us move and add some that deal with the plant side of it as well. And especially, you know, if you look overall at Northern Nevada, and we have a lot of food manufacturing, a lot of restaurants that are growing, and that agricultural, you know, farm to table movement, as well as, you know, just the growth of farmers markets and so on. I see that there's a real opportunity there to do that. So actually somebody sent me an email today to set up a meeting. So it is in the back of my mind, if not the front of my mind.
I just have a question. Well, actually, I'd like Mr. Stokes to speak to the joint partnership between the school districts and WNC and funding, and just how does this partnership help a high schooler's parents save money?
When we first went down the road of planning for Jumpstart, and we mentioned earlier that we get a per pupil amount from the state, and we knew that if we were going to be sending students to another site, maybe all day, for their educational day, it would make sense if we used the money that we receive from the state to pay that toward that student's education. And so we actually pay full book and tuition costs to WNC for and on behalf of a student. So anybody listening to me doing the arithmetic for a university or a college schedule would do well to put their children in this program because it's truly an amazing benefit. And so far, it's working well, and we're happy to be able to do that.
I can just tell you, I have kind of two thoughts I wanted to say, but piggybacking on Richard, 15 units at WNC ballpark is about $1,400 a semester, plus a couple $100 for books. That's an expense that with this program right now, the parents don't incur. So it's a fabulous program in that regard. And then, we've, in doing this, the question always comes up, how is this impacting, say, our AP programs? And what we're seeing, and I don't have the exact numbers, but what I'm hearing from the high school is that both programs are thriving. We're still having an increase in kids coming in and taking the AP classes. So it's showing us there's room for both. And really the big dilemma these kids have is if they're ready for this, do they go the Jump Start route? Do they go the AP route? And the few kids that come to me and ask me those questions, I always tell them if that's your big problem, your big dilemma in high school you're having, you are absolutely doing the right thing. So it's really it's fantastic for kids, and we're seeing that whether it's CTE, whether it's the A-Track, whether it's the many programs we have at the high school, there's a place for everybody now.
And then I'd just like to piggyback and thank you for taking on the automotive part of it, because that was a big discussion at ours, because it was a very well attended classrooms or classes, and they were coming out with those same skills that they're coming out of yours with their certificates and stuff. And unfortunately, because of the manufacturing thing taking off, we had to go that direction. So I'm really glad to see you guys pick that up and help our kids keep going on that same track. And for that, I am truly grateful.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on this? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 10 or agenda item 36, public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time?
I have one.
Okay.
In the spirit of supporting CTE, I'm just going to plug the Concert Under the Stars, which is July 12th. It does support ag in the school, and it also supports the culinary program. And the cost of tickets is $25 to $65, so there's all levels of support there. And it is the 50th anniversary of the Family Stone and Lydia Pence and Cold Blood. So July 12th, and it's at the Brewery Arts Center. Buy your tickets at carsoncitygreenhouse.org or at the Brewery Arts Center box office or at the Carson City Visitors Bureau.
Mayor, I think you're right. We now know
And
who sent the email.
We also have a wonderful live auction with all kinds of fantastic things available at that event.
Do we, oh, go ahead, Mr. Stokes.
I hope I don't get in trouble here. I'm not sure if this qualifies as public comment, but just a suggestion, since how both groups are here, to consider maybe our next meeting date so that we can get this on our schedules is January 18th, 2018. So again, I know this isn't an agendized or an action item, but you might just take a look at your calendars, and that would be essentially 6 months from this meeting.
If there are no other public comment, we'll, oh, did somebody say? Okay, who's not talking to me? We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 11 on 37, adjournment. This meeting's adjourned.